Hello and welcome. Today on my podcast, I have Shanan Zickefosse joining me. Shanan has multiple titles and runs multiple businesses all at the same time. She's a BSN, RN, CPCP, and CMM. She began her cosmetic tattooing business in 2006 and immediately sought to further her knowledge and her skills. She joined the Society of Permanent Cosmetic Professionals, SPCP, back in 2007 and became a regular attendee at conventions and conferences. Wanting to know more and to expand her abilities to serve others, Shanan obtained her Bachelor of Science in Nursing, a BSN, from the University of Tulsa. After a very personal experience when her daughter acquired necrotizing fasciitis, that's the flesh-eating bacteria, during an illness, Shannon began to focus her nursing research on wound care and infection control. She found ways to incorporate this knowledge into her cosmetic tattooing business. The SPCP directors asked Shannon to use her expertise to write an infection control book for the permanent makeup industry. The book aimed to provide a comprehensive understanding and applications regarding preventing infection. She continued her work with the SPCP and took over their Train the Trainer program in the spring of 2017. She continues to contribute to this essential program for current and upcoming permanent cosmetic trainers. Zickefosse owns Regeneration Tulsa, a boutique medi-spa in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where they offer permanent cosmetics, injectables, regenerative, and holistic therapies. In addition, in January of 2024, she took over the position of administrator for the SPCP. In 2025, Shanan published the second edition of Principles of Infection Control for the Tattoo Industry to update it and make it even more relevant for both permanent cosmetic and body art professionals. So I'd like you to help me welcome Shanan Zickefosse. And Shanan, what's your story? Talk to us.
Thanks for having me, Judy. Um, I to be honest with you, I got into this industry as a way to be able to support my children. I could kind of see a pathway where single motherhood was going to be in my future, and I knew that I needed to find an opportunity to be able to earn an income and be able to support my children in a way that wasn't necessarily clocking in at from 8 to 5. Um, Little did I know at that time, 8 to 5 is kind of a joke in self-employment world. We turn into weekends, nights, and all the things. But I knew that I was going to be able to make sure that my children were to and from school and to be able to make sure that there was milk and bread here. And just to be able to be at their events on the weekends and things like that. That's really what led me into a role like this, to be able to own a business and be able to be present as a parent. So that was really kind of how I got started into this industry. And then so many things followed up after that that made solidified what I was doing and made me kind of achieve higher levels in terms of education and skill set. You know, just life happened over time. So um, it started with a divorce, and multiple things have happened since then that have led me to the position that I'm in right now. So
Excellent. And I know you've been very successful at what you've done. What would you say were maybe the biggest 1 to 3 challenges that you've had to face?
you know, getting into the industry, I got into the industry, like you said, in 2006. When I got into the industry, there wasn't really a lot of knowledge in terms of consumer knowledge. They thought that, I talk to people, just speaking with people, networking and things like that, I found early on it was the lack of education of the consumer. And so I had to be the person that educated the consumer. That was a little bit of a challenge for me to be able to overcome those barriers, because I had 50-year-old women think that they were too old. And I'm like, well, my oldest client's 95. It's not too old, but I had to be the person in my state to be the one to educate the consumer. So, it's a much easier place for people to enter our industry now, now that we've kind of paved that way over time. And even those before me, did that for me. And so that was one of my early, I would say, things I had to strategize with to be able to overcome that barrier. Then leading a little further into my education, there was a situation where my daughter, you mentioned this, my daughter was diagnosed with cancer. And right after her first round of chemo, she developed necrotizing fasciitis, as you said, is the flesh eating bacteria. At that particular time, I was in the middle of nursing school. I'm not an old nurse, I'm a permanent makeup artist that went back to get my bachelor's degree. So I was in the middle of that program when my daughter got sick. And I had to learn a lot because I wasn't a licensed registered nurse at that point. I had to overcome a lot of those barriers of me being a parent, plus, somebody that was partially through nursing school with a little bit of knowledge. So
Mm.
that actually was a huge problem that I ran into. It was a huge challenge that I ran into. But in the end, her illness and my education ended up like driving me up into the industry a little higher. It was the combo of those that
Mm.
led me down pathways that I had to learn. You know, Permanent makeup is a certificate program, it's not
Right.
a degree program. And with that said, you can be eighth grade education or you can be collegiate when you enter into this realm of work. So I ended up having to focus heavily on education, 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 and making sure that I could learn more, be more, and that kind of guided my career moving forward after her illness. And I had to get back into the industry after having to close for 11 months during her illness. I had to come back into the
Wow.
industry and fight to rebuild the business, you know. And so I would say that was fairly decent challenge.
I would say so too. That's something I didn't know about you. I didn't know that you'd had to close the business. Well, you did
Yeah.
makes perfect sense, but
Yeah.
to have to come back after that.
Well, and as a single parent, the business had to be closed because my daughter was in the hospital. When your
Hmm.
daughter goes in the hospital, you go to the hospital.
Right.
So we lived in a hospital for 6 months. So it was it was a lot. It was a lot to overcome. So
Wow. That's
did it.
you did it.
Did it.
Uh,
We're still standing.
absolutely. At what point for that specific challenge did you know you were going to make it? Or did you always know?
And never doubted.
Never
Never
doubted.
doubted. I am one of those people. I think a lot of people would use the term manifestation. I am one of those people that I believed that my daughter would receive
Mhm.
healing and overcome. And as doctors stood and told me that it was time to bury her, you know, literally watched them resuscitate her. They said that, it's time to call family in. I actually never, nothing within my being felt like I was going to lose my daughter. So obviously she is alive today and she did make it through all that, but there was so much that went on during that point that I just started pulling from every reference and resource that I could to be able to get us to a point where she could walk again, she could toilet herself, she could shower on her own. It was a very long year, but that year taught me a lot because I was in the middle of nursing school. I had to take a year off of that too. And so I needed to go and enhance my education. I had to learn about infection control. I had to learn about wound healing. I saw that as an opportunity rather than a challenge. It was, how can I learn to keep my daughter alive because her immune suppression was still strong from chemotherapy that was ongoing. How do I keep her alive? Hand washing. How do I keep her alive? Make sure they're hand washing before they walk in the room. How do I keep her alive? Make sure that I'm standing there whenever wound care is done at her bedside. Make sure that I'm assisting. Make sure I'm calling them out if something wasn't going right in the hospital setting. So that was just really a learning opportunity for me, to be honest with you. So it was not devastating as much as it was just positive attitude, keep forging forward, because we need to good attitudes and resilience
Mm-hmm.
um, were really what we focused on.
Wow. That was a pretty amazing challenge that you overcame.
Mhm.
What were your biggest takeaways from it?
Funny thing, doctors don't always know everything. It's
Ah,
okay to be, it's okay to challenge them. It's okay to ask questions. That was a big takeaway for me, to not just accept things for as they are. As they tell you, that's not just because they tell you that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the Bible, I suppose. You know, there's errors in humans, and recognizing that humans aren't always 100% correct, right, or no. It's okay for me to be somebody that challenges that. So, it developed a lot of, I think you might have used the word tenacity. Tenacity is something that I do have a lot of, just to be able to not accept things as they are, because, we've got ceilings on us in life. And that ceiling of your daughter's going to die today was just something that needed to be broken. And I
okay.
needed to go higher. You
Good for
know,
you.
my daughter's not dying today, and she didn't.
And she didn't. And she didn't.
Yeah.
I can empathize with that and totally comprehend that mindset because when I had
Mhm.
cancer, I knew my grandmother had had breast cancer. And when she was a midlife woman, and she lived till 95. And if grandma could do it, I could.
Right.
And that,
Funny that you said that, Judy. My dad had cancer, and the very first T-shirt we had made for my daughter said, "If Papa can do it, I can."
there you go.
Or "So can I," or something like that. She had a little pink T-shirt. "If Papa can do it, so can I." That was the very first out of the gate.
And if
Just
that's
because
where
they give
you're,
you bad news,
yeah, no,
it doesn't mean that that is what it is. It may be a hard time, but it doesn't. It's just going to make you have stronger character in life.
exactly. If grandma could do it, if Papa can do it, we can do it.
Right.
So it's, and, and it makes a whole lot of difference in the outcome
It does.
because the mind leads the body.
Hmm.
So
100% believe that. We operate in that manner at our house.
absolutely. And I think that that's probably where medicine can miss or make a mistake
Hmm.
because they're not there.
Right.
They haven't got that mindset. They're basing it on something else that we
Right.
don't, that's not relevant to us. So
Correct.
it's moving forward, moving forward.
Hmm.
So, whatever the person's issue is, no matter how daunting it may seem, if you have that positive mindset and you believe in it, things will change. Things will be tough, but you can do it. You can get there.
Absolutely.
So,
I absolutely. And Judy, I always believe that because I've been kind of a person that, in today's times, people will call it putting a vision board together, but I was the person that put together a annual goal list, if you will. And I type it bullet points, and I would lay it out in multiple formats of like emotional goals, house goals, financial goals, professional goals in terms of my education, and even my philanthropy. I want to make sure when I'm giving, I choose where I'm giving. So when I'm doing things, it's always with intention. And when I lay out my goals of the year, those get posted, and I put them up on a board that I'm going to walk. In fact, I put them here. I put them on the back side of this cabinet because when I walk in here, I can see it all the time, and it's just stuck up there every year. And it helps me stay in context of who I am as a being, make sure that I meet those goals. And some of it might be as simple as save an extra $500 every month. It could be donate one pro bono procedure, every quarter or every month or something like that. That stuff kind of keeps me within my timeline of the year and my balance of what I want to finish my year out. The first year I did that was 2009, and that's the one that stays most on the forefront because I met every goal that year. And I had more goals to overcome that year than any year in the past, or any year in the future from there. And so that's the one that's the most important year for me, because I was going through some tough stuff. And I still was able to not dwell in the tough stuff, but overcome it because I had those goals, you know.
So, yeah, creating, I love that you're created um, sort of a calendar or a snapshot of what you wanted to do in the different aspects of your life. And
Hmm.
you put them where you couldn't forget them
Hmm.
and you made them happen.
And I do it every year.
I think that's fantastic. And I've actually seen some programs that try to teach people to do that, starting out with a number one thing. So I think that we can get fractured with trying to do too many goals. But if the goals
Yeah.
each relate to a different aspect of life, like you don't need 20 business goals. If you've
No.
got, if you define it correctly, you can have one for each aspect, and your
Hmm.
list doesn't get where your eyes,
Overwhelming.
yeah, it doesn't get overwhelming. You can keep it achievable. You just have to be clear about the areas of your life or your mindset or your emotions or your weight or whatever it might be, and have one defined goal for each area.
I'm looking at this list, Judy, from even the 2009 list, because that was the year that I started that system for myself. And as you're talking, I'm looking at my emotional goals. I had 7. My house goals, I had 6.
Wow.
My financial goals, I had 7. Professional, I had 10, but I'd only been in the industry for, I was hitting my 3rd year at that point. So I had a lot to accomplish, you know? And so even with my donations, I only had 2. It wasn't like I over overset boundaries. It was just like, or overset like goals, I guess. It was just something to keep me in check in all aspects of my life. So they work really well if you can keep them within somewhat of a manageable level.
So maybe, would you say clear and specific for each
You
goal?
know, some of them are a little bit vague. One of my goals was for professionalism at that time was to maintain professionalism in all work settings. So what does that
Mhm.
mean? That could be no gossip. That could be don't be catty with somebody. Don't be, I mean, just simple things. Some are vague and some were very specific. One of them was be innovative. I've been very innovative over the
Mhm.
last 20 years. This is my 20th year in this industry this month. I'm
Congratulations.
celebrating right now. And I think I have been fairly innovative, and some of those things I carry forward to the next year because what else can I do that no one else has done? Innovation. So Some of them are more specific, like I said, some, save $500 every month. At that point in my life, that was probably more than I actually made.
There
So my goal was to make more so I could save it, you know? I
you
mean,
go.
some of them were very, very specific targets, and some were more just generic. Just how do I conduct myself as a human being,
Hmm.
professionally, business, even keeping my head clear.
What do you do to keep your head clear?
I am, I know you know me, but our audience may not. I am a person that I walk into a room and there might be 200 people in the room, and I see that as, oh my gosh, 200 new friends. Well, that's very overwhelming for some people, but it brings me energy. But at the end of that event, I'm stripped and I have to go home and I need to get into my bubble and I need to clear, decompress, hot baths with lots of Epsom salts. We make our own products here at the house for our salt baths, but um lots of baths, lots of music. I build out my space to be ambiance that suits my needs. So there's usually I'll go sensory, maybe diffusing oils, or it may be a candle in the room. That's what speaks to me. And if I am in my kitchen and there's a lot of productivity going on in my kitchen, I may be trying to burn off some excess stress by creating things. So a lot of people will talk to me about, oh my gosh, you were cooking this. And I'm thinking, you have no idea while I was cooking that. This happened at work. So I had to go to the kitchen, So those are my therapies,
Kitchen is a
just
therapy.
kitchen is therapy. Anytime I'm in my kitchen, I do it for love, but I also do it for therapy. And so he may have the television on, but I might have two earbuds and soothing music just so I can check out. So that's really how I clear my mind.
Hmm.
I'm very, very, very busy with the roles that I have. And so sometimes I have to just disconnect and turn off everything and do not disturb on the phone, shut everything off, turn the humans off in my life, pet my dog.
I absolutely agree. There's nothing like petting a dog. So, where's Shannon headed next?
I don't know. Sometimes I have a hard time catching my own self. Um,
Mm.
I have been in this role for the education director of the Society of Permanent Cosmetic Professionals since January of 2023. At the time that I took this role over, it was not necessarily a transition that I would have chosen, but I, regardless, had to take it on. And so there's been a lot of rebuilding of this organization. Where I'm heading next usually includes a lot of networking and finding people that want to participate, that want to help, I like to delegate. Um, One person cannot do all things, and it's an organization that needs a lot of meat and potatoes thrown in, and a lot of personalities need to be those meat and potatoes that make sure that the audience out there can find and connect with people that they can relate to. So that's currently part of what I'm doing. When I'm talking with my team, I'm looking for people that can meet a need that maybe we don't have. So a lot of what's going on with me right now has to do with a lot of networking. And my business, I love it. I'm still hands on in my business. I am not a nurse injector that people come in and we don't know who's injecting us today. It's me. It's always me. So there could be goods and bads that come with that because I won't step away from the ownership side of my business. Like a lot of the businesses are today, they're trying to back away and just hire the people. That's not really what I want to do because I love what I do. So my business is full time for me, and the organization is a collaboration. So
Right.
this year will be a lot of goals of collaborating with people.
Well, that is fascinating. And ultimate objective. Where do you want to go?
I want to go to the beach and
I
never
knew
come
you were going to
back.
say that.
Well, you asked.
That's true. That's true.
Ultimate objective, Judy, it's hard for me to answer that. I don't know
Mm.
that I'm really in a space to be able to answer an ultimate objective right now because there's still so many moving parts. Um, I can tell you that some of the objectives have been met, and it's allowing me to change my objectives. We're not necessarily in fight or flight survival mode with the organization that I run. It's not fight or flight right now. It has been the last few years. It's been a lot to overcome, but because some of those basic needs have been met with our systems and our ability to be able to communicate in a different way with our members, it's allowing me to change my objectives. So that might be a question I could answer better in 6 months.
Well, all right
You
then.
know, I mean, where I'm at right now, I really want to provide a good output that people want to be a part of, and that's my goal. And that I have 100% met that professionally with my business. I don't silly thing. I don't market for my business. I don't advertise for my business. I don't do anything for my business. My business is so sustainable at this point. Now, as my clients age out, it may not be, but they age out, I'm done. I'm ready
Yeah.
to quit, because I'm at a certain age, I don't want to work anymore. So I really think I'm on a good pathway with my business based on the way that I run my business. And I'm trying to incorporate a lot of that within our organization, our nonprofit organization, to be able to put out a product that people want to be a part of, and be engaging, and people want to be part of us. People want to be a part of me. They want to be my friend or whatever, not just me, but just in general, to be able to maintain a product that people want to align with. And so standards, I have really high standards, and so not everybody wants to be a part of something that has a lot of high standards. So, and I continue to get
They,
educated. So
I think they don't understand the value, or they're misplacing the value.
I think in the current climate in the world that we live in, I would say probably it started in about 2015. There was a lot of people that jumped into the permanent cosmetic industry, and they were getting a lot of instant gratification, and they had an overabundance of confidence while not necessarily having quite enough education to be able to support the confidence. It hurt the industry. And those who did survive, because it's a low survival rate when you get in this industry. I would say probably, if I were to guess, probably 15 to 20% of the people that get in the industry, and I think that number's high, are the ones that actually survive and are here in 10 years. Um, with that said, that same group of people, that instant gratification, they don't not wanting to put in the long-term hard work,
Hmm.
the value for them is it shifted from how can you teach me to what's in my goodie bag. That's the value. They're wanting to know, what are they getting for free? What are they getting? What are they getting? What are they getting? And I even see that with my own students. When I trained, and probably when you were in that industry at one point, it- you pretty much showed up for class and you went and bought your own supplies, and now that's just not the culture. The culture wants, hand me, give, just put it in my pocket. And I see that as being it's difficult to meet that demand of value for them, because they're looking for a lot of that. If I do this, give me this. They're not leaning in for probably the right reasons. I think, everybody wants, what am I getting? What am I getting? And I don't mean that just as the consumer of education. I mean that as consumers. Even my clientele has shifted. The attitude has shifted. They want to know, what am I getting? What am I getting? What am I getting? And everybody has a little bit of don't scam me. And we didn't used to see that. They come in with that attitude and you have to gain their trust. There's a lot more emotional aspect that we have to give as providers and as educators and as running the organization, that we have to pour out into the consumer differently than what we used to.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, I started back in 1980. So it
Yeah.
was actually permanent cosmetics. I added that in 87. So it was really wild and woolly. And you got very little for what you spent.
There-
There was no value.
exactly. There was no value. And that's a huge difference with the current climate, because there's so much social media out there. There's so much content on YouTube, that people don't find any value in investing in their education. They want to pay $1,000 for you to donate 900 hours. It's like, would they want us to pay them for what their goals are? And I've run into it with students. I've had students walk in and they think I'm going to teach them injectables and lashes and microblading and powder brows and areola and scars in my fundamental program. And I'm like, it's a fundamental program. You don't even know what the outcome is going to be. Like, I can't jump you 5 years forward, because you still need to know how to touch skin, stretch skin, things like that. So it's a lot of management in terms of client management, consumer management, um, student management. There's a lot of management that goes on. And I feel really bad for the people that don't have good um, investment in, like you mentioned, train the trainer program. And I had no intention of bringing that up. But I'll tell you, Judy, that program has done monumental things for me, because it teaches me, when I work with all of the students on my Zooms or in a live, it's a 2-day program. And I had no intentions of talking on this, but what that program did for me is it taught me to be a better educator, and it taught me to be a better um, executive director, to be honest with you, because you're listening to people out in the wild, from all the different states, different countries, and things like that. And you're hearing what they're dealing with, because demographically, I mean, you come to Oklahoma and everybody's going to wave and say howdy. You go to New Jersey and they're going to look at you like you stole something from them. It's just the culture is so different. So Train the Trainer really helped me be able to find ways of providing value, to be able to find tips and tricks that I can use for each student to meet them in the need that they have, because they don't all come in equal. This is not a homogenous society. We all have our inputs that educated us, our life experiences that educated us, that bring them to the table with their own experiences. And that is something important to note for trainers. And I feel bad for people that are out there suffering without some sort of a resource, and they're trying to teach their students, and they've never taken a course like that, because they don't have the skill set to be able to encounter what's going on out in society right now. Everybody wants it. They want it now. They want instant gratification. And these poor instructors are struggling.
Wow. So, what tips? Let's divide this and go a couple of steps here. What tips and
Okay.
suggestions would you have for a consumer who's out there and maybe they didn't know we were going to talk about this, but now they're thinking, what is that? And is that something that I should do? So, how do you suggest they prepare themselves to even talk to somebody?
Are you talking about the consumer in terms of like a student, or a consumer that comes and speaks with me about a service?
Start with the consumer that wants a service. So the general public.
So the consumer that starts with service, I will tell you that um, okay, so there's so many different mindsets on preparing your consumer, because you can do it in like video format or educational format on websites and Google and things like that. I personally, because I have been in the industry a long time, I was the one that built my very first website in 2007. I didn't have any help. I learned very early that me focusing on building my website with quality content, quality information, demonstrating my levels of education. When clients go to my website, they go and they're like, oh, in 2006, she did this. You cannot believe how many women love the fact that I itemize like a receipt all of my education. And I had a lady come in for a consult this week, and she was so happy with my itemization on my website of everything, the services I provide. There are some things I don't put on there because I don't want um, somebody I don't know to just try to schedule it. You have to be in my office before I offer certain services because those are uh, in my term, it's premium service. I don't really want to the general public to just find me in the wild and just come in for something silly like that. But my consumers, my personal consumers, come in pretty educated. They walk in the door for a consult because they want to know if they're a good candidate for me. Not that I'm a good candidate for them. They already know they want to hire me when they come in my door for a consult. We never have I shouldn't say this out loud. We do not have any consults that don't close ever. If they walk in my door, they know they want to do it. But that's because I provided so much education, and they also do their intake paperwork before they come in for consultation. They get to see everything itemized. I even itemize how long it's going to take me to draw their brows, to numb them, how long the procedure is, how long their check-in, how long their checkout time. I itemize their service out, the time they're here. So that is what I do for my business. That works for me. I am not on TikTok. I do have Instagram, few pictures on Instagram. Don't really care about my Instagram. I'm not really looking for that crowd. I'll take the crowd, but I'm not marketing to that crowd because I'm looking for a different crowd. I'm looking for the crowd personally that wants to be on their computer, that wants to go to Google, wants to find me on Google and go there. The younger people in our industry benefit more from their Instagram posts, lots of marketing on Instagram and lots of TikToks. They're getting your younger audience. I'm happy with my retirees. Love them.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Love them. So,
So now, if you have, so the number one thing is detailed education. So if they're just out there browsing and trying to find information, they want to look for a website that gives them a lot of detailed information about the
mhm.
person, about the
Yes.
services, every aspect of it in depth, getting as much information as they possibly can. And they know then that the
Hmm.
person has this mindset of being detailed and taking care of things in a detailed way, which in the field of permanent cosmetics, I always
Yes.
found to be absolutely essential. It's,
My clients love the fact that I have a little touch of OCD.
makes good sense
They
to me.
recognize that where they recognize that in my information on my website. They recognize it. I mean, they tell me all the time, "Oh, I saw you did this and I saw you did that." And I mean, right now I'm a little bit behind. I think I might be about a year behind on updating my education, but I go back as far as 2006 on my line items. And women will set up at 3 o'clock in the morning and read every single bit of that. And they are getting referred from the physicians who've also looked at the site, and they know that I've invested in my education. I didn't just do my initial training and then charge exorbitant prices. They are coming in because of all of the content that they're able to access without ever even speaking with us. And once they
Great.
speak to us, it's a kind of a done deal.
There you go. So, what about the students? What tips would you, if they're considering training, what should they look for?
You know, comprehensive training.
Mm,
Um,
I
my,
couldn't.
I will tell you, comprehensive training is going to touch on multiple learning aspects. Um, just telling you this is how you draw a brow and that's it is not enough information. I tend to teach from a multiple service approach concept. I also teach my students differently than a lot of people in the United States. A lot of people in the United States bring their students in, they have them for 5 or 6 days, and then they're gone forever. I keep my students in what would be determined as a flexible education program. They come in, I do like maybe a month or two of online e-learning that they do just specific to e-learning, and it's they're working through their workbook, they're working through their textbook. We are in an online classroom where I'm speaking with them. They're coming in, they're doing observation hours. The reason that they're choosing me is they see that I have all the comprehensive availabilities for them. I've got an online classroom, I've got PowerPoints, I've got, I believe, 14 PowerPoints in my systems. I've got several that I've recorded, lots and lots of things that they can continually go back to and go, I don't really understand this. And it may be an anesthetic thing, it may be the wound healing. I've got a wound healing presentation, different things that I'll say, this is your homework for the week. They go home and they learn and learn and learn all those things that we worked on this week, and they go back and they look at their PowerPoints that they watched a month ago for reinforcement. So I'm trying to tap into tactile, auditory, vision. I'm doing all of the things that I can to be able to be a good educator, because everybody has different learning styles, and some
Mm-hmm.
people just need to watch. They don't hear. I don't process. I don't learn with auditory learning. When you're teaching me, I have a piece of paper and a pen and I'm writing. It's like, I do not talk in class. Do not talk in class. I still talk, but I did write it, 100 times. But that's how I got through my nursing program successfully, was writing any concept that I didn't quite understand. Sometimes I would draw diagrams, diagrams of the lungs or the heart or something like that. But that I had to find a way that worked for my education needs. So in my student application, I ask a lot of those types of questions too. How do you learn? Are you tactile? I'll have them draw things. I will ask a lot of questions. I even have them write me like a small little essay of how would you handle this if somebody is, not satisfied. And in my application, where they're having to fill out all of that information, I do tell them in there, I'm asking these questions because I need to know how I can help meet your educational goals, you know, because I'm not an auditory learner. You can't just say, put a fly on the wall on point two. It doesn't work for me. I'm over here looking at like, point three or whatever, or point seven or something. I'm not looking because I didn't process that. So that makes a good educator to be able to find all of those variabilities that people bring to you. I had a student, I'll give an example. I had a student, um, she had been injured by a horse. She was a horse owner and she got injured by a horse, and we were working with her eyeliner stretch. And I use all of my fingers. I don't have a finger that's not busy doing something. My fingers are busy. I've got a machine hand, I've got stretch fingers, I've got, all the things that I'm working when I'm trying to do a service. Eyeliner is a more specific, more involved 10 finger stretch situation. It's a little different than brows. You can pretty much stretch and work. Eyeliner, you're working with like pulling a lid down and doing a machine. All of these things are coming into this. Well, my student, I'm trying to teach her what to do with her pinky. She had a wonky pinky. I said, "Why do you have a wonky pinky?" Well, she got smashed. Her finger didn't move. We had to overcome that by how can we use a different finger? Those kinds of things are necessary in terms of instruction. How do we overcome these things? How can we eliminate barriers to learning? Eliminating barriers to learning, I believe, is the most important strategy that you can use as an instructor.
That's fantastic. What a great insight. That is. So, if you are a potential student looking for a trainer, You might want to find how they help people overcome barriers.
I agree. I agree. Comprehensive information on your website helps as an instructor.
So back to comprehensive and detailed information. And
Right.
and then when you're chatting with them, find out how
Communication is so essential.
communication, how do they help people overcome barriers? So, and if you've got barriers, they need to know about them so you can find out how they would
Mhm.
help you overcome them.
Yeah. Well, and two, even with the system that I have in place, I believe it to be fairly unique in the United States, my educational platform, because I've got a catalog. Just like you were enrolling in college, I have a catalog. I have a very large catalog. It tells you all the details of what is expected. I have a student training contract, what's expected, what I promise you. It's just comprehensive is the word that I use all the time. I make sure that you are communicated with, you know what is expected. You know when to be here. You know my rules. You know what I want you to wear at my office. I mean, some of that has been learning. I've had to learn that and go, okay, I can't take pictures of you because all I see is cleavage. So then I made them wear scrubs. I mean, just silly little things that I've had to overcome. I can't promote you if all I see are cleavage. I can't take pictures if that's all I'm seeing in my image. It's hard to capture the student working if they're not like dressed appropriately. I mean, the silly, silly, silly things have made me a better educator. And so I believe that being able to put good systems together to communicate you eliminates a lot of the loopholes that students will try to find.
I think you're spot on for that. And I did also use scrubs back in the dark ages when I was teaching. I was lucky because I was
Hmm.
in Oregon, and Oregon was the very first state that licensed tattooing. And with that, they licensed permanent cosmetics. They were a joint license that required 360 hours of training. So it was like a model that other states could spin off of. But what I found was it gave me the time to build their confidence and their skill sets so that by the time they
Hmm.
graduated, around of that tattooing time, there was 150 hours of one-on-one tattooing, working with live clients, no
Okay.
dummies.
Okay.
And they
Yeah.
somewhere around 100 to 125 hours, they would get cocky and have an oops.
Yeah.
And, and at
Yeah.
that point, it's pause, take a deep breath. And when the client had gone, don't worry about this. We can make an adjustment. And what did you learn? So
Hmm.
we've got to have those learn moments, I think, in no matter
Yeah.
what we're learning, because that's where the real gold is that helps make us
Hmm.
better in whatever we're trying to achieve.
I think on that note, my failures in life have been my failures and challenges in life have been the reason that I'm successful today. Um, I if life were peachy, I have not had a peachy life. I've had a very difficult life. And even my mom and I were talking about this today. I said, I don't know how I scale through life. I'm just, just kind of skating around like no big deal. And even with all of the various traumatic events that have gone on, I've kept a resilient attitude, and I think I'm just like, did it kill you? No. What are you going to learn from this? And so I think that attitude of being able to know that this is a defining moment, that how am I going to learn and move forward from this? My daughter almost died of necrotizing fasciitis. What did I learn and move forward with? I wrote an infection control book. I studied wound care. I was the very first person in the permanent cosmetic industry, in the tattoo industry, to present on wound healing and what happens with wound healing with cosmetic tattooing. Why did I do that? Not because I wanted to. It was because my daughter almost died and I had to do her wound care. It's it's overcoming the challenge of life taught me new things.
There you go. And made you even stronger and more
Yeah.
resilient.
I don't really want any more challenges. I don't want that on the menu of life anymore. I'm kind of happy, smooth sailing right now.
But we know
Right
there
now, life
will
is
be.
good and just it's floating along. And I mean, the rug could be pulled out anytime in 2026. I've seen it happen a few times. So right now, I'm going to ride the wave. That's
There you
great
go.
right now.
There you
You
go.
know.
I want to thank you so much for joining me here this morning. Any last words that you'd like to share to inspire our viewers?
Oh, well, Judy, you're putting me on the spot. I don't know if I have last words to inspire people. I do know that I do know that your attitude is going to be what brings you gratitude. Um, you can be living in the thick of absolute horrible. I mean, I can tell you there should be a movie made about my daughter. You know, it just, we literally decided when she was diagnosed gratitude was going to be our attitude. And that, I tell you, your attitude, your belief system, how you let things affect you, just because a bad moment happens, it doesn't mean it's a bad day, you know? So I really focus on keeping a positive attitude and living in gratitude. So I think that's probably the best thing that I can give you because I was ill prepared for that question.
Well, I think that that sums up what has allowed you to rise and thrive,
Oh, I believe so. I believe
which
so.
is what, which is what this podcast is all about.
Right, right. And you know, my terminology that I use in my workplace and my business and my home and my, you know, when I meet new people is we're living abundantly,
Mm-hmm.
which is very much on that same thread of what your podcast is about, is, you know, focusing on living abundantly.
There you go. And abundance doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily mean money. It's
No,
just being filled with all sorts of things for which you're grateful.
I had eggs during an ice storm this week. Thrilled.
There you go. That's always a good thing. Well,
Right.
I hope it defrosts soon for you there and you get
Yes, me
back
too.
out of those storms. And thank you again for joining
Thank you.
me and being on this podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You bet.